Hello, everyone. Welcome to Courageous Parenting. I'm Edith Wallach. I am a best-selling author, leadership coach, and mother of 3 clever children. And we have here a very, very important guest, Penny Williams. And Filza, you get to introduce Penny and share her bio with us.
Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to Courageous Parenting Summit, transforming challenges into opportunities. And our vision is to empower parents and children by building connection with love. And today we have here with us Penny William, and today she is going to talk about biology meets behavior, unlocking the secret to regulation. Welcome, Penny.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
Yeah. So let me read your bio. A parenting coach for neurodiverse families, Penny Williams teaches stuck and struggling parents how to dial down the chaos and big emotions and maximize success for their neurodivergent kids. She's the award-winning author of 4 books on ADHD, including Boy Without Instruction, host of the Beautifully Complex podcast, host of annual Neurodiversity Summit, and co-creator of the Survival to Success Accelerator, a parent training program designed to change the narrative on behavior and help parents celebrate and support their kids with ADHD to autism through neuroscience, backing insight and strategies, compassion and guidance. At the core of her work in the certainty that every human deserves to feel seen, heard, and understood. This is so beautiful. So, welcome, Penny, and tell us more about the work which you're doing and what made you choose to do this work.
I didn't really choose to do this work. This work came to me, right? I have a kid who is neurodivergent. His first diagnosis was ADHD at age 6. He's now 22. So we have been on this journey for a while. And, back in 2008, when he was originally diagnosed, there was no information. Like the physician just handed me 2 one-page fact sheets on ADHD and a prescription. And he said, I'll see you in 6 months. And I'm like, this is not helping, right? Because things were so hard already. We had gone through so much to get to that point. Autism was added later. He also has some learning disabilities. And a really high IQ. So he's a very asynchronous, wonderful human who has had some challenges and made parenting more challenging, right? And I was really in search of what do I do? What is best for him? What does he need from us as his parents? What does he need at school to be able to have access to success? And after a few years of being really obsessed and compiling a lot of information, I kind of realized that there would have been a really helpful path. There would have been some really helpful information to have at the beginning that would have made the journey a little easier, a little sooner. And so I just started sharing that information. I started by blogging, I wrote books, then I started coaching and doing online courses. And then the podcast came along and the summits came along. And it's my passion because it's the life that I live, right? It's my experience. And what I have found is just sharing that experience, even without trying to help people or to guide them, other parents feel less alone. They feel like when they read the book, oh my gosh, I could have written that. They feel seen, right? In a parenting journey where we often feel really isolated and alone. And so I'm so thankful that I get to be a helper, right? I get to wake up every day and help kids and families. And so I'm really happy that this chose me.
Fantastic work.
Thank you.
Can you tell us how does understanding of autonomic nervous system help us better respond to challenging behavior? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So for a long time, I call myself the great rationalizer. I'm a type A fixer. And so when my son was having a hard time, having a meltdown, having big emotions or big behaviors, I wanted to use logic and reason and get us through it really quick, right?
Yeah.
It never, ever worked. Not one time did logic or reason ever work. And I couldn't understand it until one day somebody mentioned amygdala hijack to me. And I started reading, like, what is this? What is the amygdala? Right. And, I had been on this journey for probably 4 or 5 years and hadn't even heard this yet. Still hadn't heard autonomic nervous system for several more years after that. But this is where I started understanding that my kid's biology, the way his brain is wired, the way his nervous system responds to the world, is what creates the behavior that we see on the outside. And then I could understand, okay, so if his amygdala, that emotional survival part of the brain, has taken over, his thinking brain is not accessible. Physiologically, when our kids or us, any human being, is super emotional, we're flooded in that way with dysregulation, our thinking brain is not accessible. And what happens is when we try to add logic and reason, we're adding to the overwhelm because they can't process that language. So we're actually co escalating the behavior, we're making it worse instead of helping them to regulate, which would dim that behavior, which is really the goal that we're after, right? And so understanding that biology, understanding that we all have this part of our nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, which is tasked to keep us alive. It is what keeps us breathing, keeps our heart beating without us having to think about it. But it also is our protective system. It is always looking for danger and sending up an alarm every time it senses that. It doesn't have to be accurate, and often it's not accurate. Often that's a false alarm, but our bodies are still responding to it, right? If there are any parents watching who have anxiety, you probably are recognizing a lot in yourself right now, which is what happened to me. I was like, wow, now I get what happens in my body when I get anxious. And understanding that our kids are going through something similar is really important then to understand what they need from us. If we don't know what's going on inside for them, we're just making assumptions or guessing what they need. And so, what I teach is always to look at behavior not as good or bad. Let's stop judging it and labeling it. And let's look at it as either regulated or dysregulated.
So, can you tell us more about it? Like, how can parents work on it? Like, to shift their belief from, like, rather judging the behavior they get to see as regulated or dysregulated. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah. So our nervous system has basically like three states. One is regulated. And what I describe that as is feeling settled. A lot of people use the word calm, but you don't have to be calm to be regulated. If the situation calls for a higher level of energy and you're feeling good, then you're regulated. So I like to use sort of the term settled, like you just feel good in your skin, things feel doable, and you feel connected to the environment or to someone around you. And that's when we see what we often term good behavior, right? And then we have two states of dysregulation. And people typically know these as fight or flight and then freeze or shut down. And in that fight or flight state, what is happening in our nervous system is it is saying, I need to move. I need to move to protect myself by fighting, or I need to move to run away and protect myself. And so when we're seeing behavior in that fight or flight stage, that is a signal for us as the parents or the educators in the room. They need some movement. They need a movement break. They need to take a break. They need to go for a walk. They need to do some jumping jacks. It's different for each individual, but they need some movement because they don't feel safe. And then in that freeze or shutdown stage, that's just what it sounds like. The body sort of shuts down in order to, again, protect itself. So you might see like a deer in headlights sort of look, or a kid who stops responding. They are probably in that state. And in that state of the nervous system, they just need to have some sort of chill and quiet, not movement, right? We need to honor what signals their body is sending out in any of those three states. And so, when you look at those and you look at what that behavior, what that instinctual response from our nervous system, it's giving us signals. So in fight or flight, it's saying this kid needs to move. In freeze or shutdown, it's saying this kid needs some chill and quiet and to be left alone for a while so that they can recover. And again, we don't want to make a lot of assumptions. So we might know that, but we still need to involve our kids. So if my kid is showing some fight or flight response behavior, I might ask, oh, it looks like your body is telling you that you need to move. What would you like to do? How can I help you? Right? So it's not us dictating, which doesn't go well on a good day when we're regulated, but really doesn't go well when our kids are dysregulated, right? So we have to pull them into that conversation to give them some autonomy and control, which helps us to feel more regulated. So it's really all about like that regulation or dysregulation, and understanding that no human being stays regulated all the time. We all get dysregulated. We as parents get dysregulated when our kids come at us and they're dysregulated, right? Because we are wired to attune to the people and the environment around us. So if my kid is coming at me yelling, my nervous system is saying, hey, you need to fight back. You need to protect yourself. And we as the adult have to be able to say, no, that's not going to be helpful right now. I know that there's a better way and I'm going to do that. And so we have to override our own bodies and our own instincts to show up in the ways that our kids really need us to. But just understanding those three states and being able to identify that in our kids' behavior gives us that first next step. What is that behavior trying to tell us? What is going on in their body? That makes sense?
Yeah,
It totally makes sense. Yes. So,
absolutely.
Penny, I have a really, really a big question, and some parents can be in a pickle because of that, because nobody told us how to self-regulate. So many adults do not know how to, unless you've done some self-development work, inner deeper work, you wouldn't know what to do. So how can we support? First, we get to learn ourselves how to self-regulate, and then how can we support our children? How can we show them? So let's assume that we know what we're doing with self-regulation. How can we support our children?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and this is something I was talking to a therapist here in the United States, actually, for one of my own summits years ago. And he said the first thing that a parent should do always, always is take a deep, empathetic breath before you do anything. And that changed my life and it's changed things for so many people because that gives you not only that pause to respond in a way that you want to, but it also regulates your own system. And it is modeling and giving your child calm to attune to, which is what their body wants to do, is attune to what we're providing, right? And so it helps us to show up as that, what I call a calm anchor for our kids. And that breath is just, I always tell parents, like, be very careful. That doesn't sound like an exasperated breath, because I think when I first started, that's how it came out, because you're often frustrated, right? But this deep, empathetic breath looks like this, right? We're not going to like really go, because that's sending that frustration out there, right? That signal. And that just gives you a little breath to not be so reactive and to be able to really respond in the way that you want to. working on our own self-regulation is key. And you're right, nobody teaches us. I wish, like in preschool, we started talking about regulation and that every human is taught about regulation because it is the core of success, of joy, of all of it, even as an adult. These are lifelong skills. But as adults, many of us are coming into parenting and we don't know that. We don't have an awareness of that. And so we have to practice it ourselves too. I even have, like, they're right here so that I can use them every day myself, these vagus nerve exercises. And they are just that, they are regulation exercises. And I have taught myself to practice them because that's how I know that not only will I show up in the ways my kids need, but I feel better, right? I feel better. Things in my life that I want to do outside of parenting are more doable. I have more opportunity for gratitude and joy that way. If you can't show up for your kid calmly in that moment, then you can have a very short, maybe discussion. Maybe your kid is beyond being able to discuss with you, but just, we're both having a really hard time right now. And when we are having a hard time like this, when our emotions are getting the best of us, when we can't get calm, we can't problem solve. And I want to help you. I want to help you solve this problem, but we need a break. I need a break too. So let's go take a 5-minute break. And then I'm going to come back to you and we're going to work on trying to solve this. Sometimes that'll work, sometimes it won't. It was magic for my kid when I learned it about middle school age, like 10 to 12, because he was really into science and he really wanted to understand what was happening. He didn't want to have that behavior either, right? He was always very remorseful after, which was a huge signal that it was not in his nature. This was not something that he chose. It was something that was happening because he didn't have the skills yet, or he had some unmet needs. And so him being able to understand, like, oh, we can't solve this because my brain is not going to let me because we can't think right now, it was really helpful. And he would be willing most of the time to take a break and then try to come back to it. And even after a break, sometimes you don't get very far, right? Some days are just really hard. But for the most part, that is going to help to de-escalate that situation a little bit in that moment. But some kids you cannot walk away from. They interpret that and internalize that as rejection, and it will make things much, much worse. So you really have to understand what your kid needs from you. When my kid was young, I could not walk away. It made it way worse. But when he got older, all he wanted was for me to go away, right? And he wanted that time to himself to at least process it himself before he talked to somebody about it. So it really depends on the individual and what they need. But you can also stay in the room and still take a break. So if your kid needs to, like, see where you are to feel safe and supported, you can stay in the room and just do your own thing and don't talk, right? So often when our kids are melting down, as I said before, I was the great rationalizer. I was talking. And what I learned was if I just stopped talking, he could recover faster and we could get on with it faster, right? And it was just less intense and a little less difficult. So, again, everybody is so different, but these are kind of core ideas that at the foundation are pretty helpful most of the time for most people.
That's a very good information. So, how does what can we do to solve the misconception between parents and educators about challenging behaviors, and how can we help into understanding them rather judging the child? What can we do around it?
Yeah, I think communication and trying to educate other people, other adults in our kids' lives, um, you have to be careful. And what I found often with working with my kids' teachers and the educators in his school was that they are the expert at educating and they don't it doesn't feel really good for a parent to come in and tell them how to educate, right? And we can understand that if we put ourselves in that position in their shoes. And so I always took a very collaborative approach. You know, I'm hearing from you that this is the issue at school. My kid is having a hard time maybe transitioning from math to English work, or, you know, putting his work away in his desk, which was a huge issue. Everything was on the floor in elementary school. It was everywhere all the time, right? And, you know, it was an issue for them in the classroom. And I said, you know, like, this is what I've seen at home that has helped. Do you think that maybe this or some version of this might be helpful in the classroom? Do you think we can try it for a few days and see if it helps? You know, educating all of our kids' teachers and all of the other people in their lives about the nervous system and regulation and all these things is too much. And really, what we need to do is just come at it, I think, with little tips here and there. Okay, that behavior you're describing to me that you're seeing at school, that is because he's dysregulated now. She's dysregulated now. And when they're dysregulated, they can't process what you're saying. They just need a break. Can we put a plan in place where, you know, they can raise their hand and say, I need a break, or they can leave the room without asking, which is what my kid needed and what made the biggest difference in school, because we had a lot of school avoidance and refusal. And what he needed was just a break without anybody talking to him, without having to ask, because he was worried somebody would say no. And when we finally got that, everyone was worried that he would just leave the classroom and never come back every day, right? He wouldn't learn anything. Didn't happen. In like the 4 or 5 years he had left of school at that point, he used it 2 times. That's it. Because he was no longer anxious about being trapped in that room and being dysregulated, because he was no longer trapped. He could get up and leave, right? So, like, those little tidbits can make all the difference, but we kind of have to share them almost as little tidbits. You know, nobody wants a lecture. Nobody wants, like, you know, to be hit in the face with a bunch of brain science. But little bits can really make a difference. And then once other people in our kids' lives start seeing that difference, they might get more on board, right? And I get this question a lot about co-parenting. Even parents who are still in the same household don't always agree. We don't agree in every way about parenting with our co-parent. It can't happen. And it can be very, very challenging to navigate. And part of it is, okay, you have your certain you know, standards and best practices and the approaches that you want and the understanding that you have. You can share that. It may be received, it may not be received, but if they start to see results from it, it will permeate a little better, right? You know, even if the wall is up, seeing results is what helps all of us. But we also have to take time to see those results. Nothing that I'm talking about is like flipping a switch. This is all long-term practice and really working at it and keeping a focus on it.
So, all the challenging behavior which we are seeing as a parent or experiencing as a parent, like it's tough for us to see all the time as a signal or a message around what they want to communicate. So can you tell us more tips and strategies how to handle those challenging behaviors and immediately shift ourselves from the energy to judgment to support in the heat of the moment?
Yeah, it's really hard in the heat of the moment. And honestly, in the heat of the moment, your strategies, like the regulation activities and things, are not going to work for your kid, right? Because again, the thinking brain is inaccessible. And once we are dysregulated, we have to recover. Our bodies have to recover. It can't just be turned like off and on. And so in the moment, the biggest, most important things are safety first. So, is your kid safe? Are the people around your kids safe, physically safe? Then it's giving our kids a sense that they are safe. So, when we talk about safety, most people just assume that we're talking about physical safety, physical danger. We're also talking about emotional safety, social safety, psychological safety, right? That sense that I am okay, that things around me are not going to harm me, scare me, make me worry, make me feel not good, right? Out of whack, which is what I often call dysregulation. Like you just don't feel right in your body, right? And so we need to help our kids feel safe again, because all of this behavior is coming from a sense that they don't feel safe. They are their body, again, their nervous system has thrown up that alarm. You may not be safe, right? We don't know if it's true or not, but you may not be safe. And that's where a lot of that behavior is coming from. So to counterbalance that, we need to help them to feel safe. And we can say, you are safe, right? We can encourage them with a little bit of words and a really calm, slow tone. Slow down your speaking so that it's easier to process what you do say. Keep to a very calm tone, almost monotone. It can be really helpful because, again, even inflection in the voice has to be processed and interpreted, right? So just really sort of flat, calm presence, and then offering help. So, I would just say, how can I help you? Is there something I can do to help you right now to feel safe? They may say no. They may scream at me. No. They might throw something at me. No, there's nothing you can do, right? We've all been there. And that's what's true for them in that moment. And then we just have to say, okay, I'm here for you whenever you're ready. And then we stop talking, right? When we're really down in the thick of it, when they've already sort of gone over the edge, is the way I describe it, that is all we can do. No breathing exercise is going to help. None of those strategies are going to help at that time. Safety first, like physical safety first, and then psychological, social, emotional safety second, and then just letting it be and being supportive. Be that loving presence that they need so that they know that it will be okay. Outside of those moments is where we do the work on learning about our bodies, learning about what those signals are telling us, making those practices, right? Deciding which exercises are helpful for our kids and which ones aren't, because none of them are helpful for everyone. There are a few that are scientifically proven to engage that vagus nerve, which is the main nerve that controls our autonomic nervous system. And those work for every body, but not every kid is open to doing them. And that's why I say they don't even work for every kid. Your kid has to be willing to do it. If they're not willing and you're forcing them to do something, all you're doing is dysregulating more, right? But like gargling or humming, anything that vibrates the throat, because our vagus nerve is running down through the core. Cold water on the face is one that will sort of reset and activate that nerve for calming. A lot of kids don't like water on their face, though, especially our complex kids. And so an ice pack works. An ice pack on their cheeks or their neck, on either side, or even the upper chest, will do the same thing. And like blowing, so blowing bubbles, or sucking thick liquid through a straw, those are all the ones that are just scientifically backed. They absolutely activate the vagus nerve. If your kid is willing to do them, they can be helpful, but they're never going to work in the midst of a meltdown. It's too late for that at that point. And so you want to start trying to practice regulation activities with your kid in their best moments, because we want them to make a positive association with doing those activities. If you're telling your kid just breathe every time they're in the middle of a meltdown, they've made a negative association with that. They're not going to want to do that at any point. And so we always want to start with, just in those great moments of the day, hey, why don't we try blowing some bubbles? Let me know how your body feels. Let me know how your mind feels, right? And getting that feedback from them to help them to associate, when I do this activity, I feel more calm. Or, my homework feels more doable. Like I'm always telling parents, put regulation activities before those times where you're asking a lot of your kid, sitting down to homework, sitting down to the dinner table, before they start their morning routine, before they start their bedtime routine, right? Before they have friends over, if social skills and social interaction is difficult, right? Before you go somewhere that they've never been before, which might be hard for them, right? But we want to start when things are really good and teaching them those practices then, and then teaching them to do them when they start to feel sort of out of whack and dysregulated, so that they can intervene and not maybe get all the way to super meltdown mode, right? I think that's something I wish somebody had told me, like the day my kids started walking and talking, right? Like I wish I'd known that at the very beginning.
Fantastic, Penny. Thank you so much. This is such a valuable information for parents. As we are coming to close to the end of this interview, can you share the gift for our audience?
Yes, so I have a very short online course that is 3 high impact things that you can do to start changing behavior right away. They are 3 just short videos with me. There's a really small workbook that goes with it, and it's the things that I have seen that have the biggest sort of bang for your buck, right? So if you do, and one of them is regulation, building regulation activities in your day to day. That is one of those lessons. And that permeates throughout all of day to day life, right? And so these are 3 things that are really going to help in a lot of ways. And they can sign up and do that absolutely free.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for sharing your all the knowledge and wisdom with us, and all the viewers will be getting the link just below the interview. And can you just give us last quick tips around like parenting kids with ADHD and all the neurodiversity?
Yeah. My first tip is be kind to yourself. As parents, we get really dysregulated. We get really upset about feeling like we did something wrong or feeling like we're failing them. And you are doing the absolute best that you can every single day. Some days that's really great. Some days you're going to have a hard time, and that's okay too. But you have to give yourself some grace. The second thing I would say is find your parenting people, because you need to know that you're not alone. And that will really validate your experience, which is such a huge relief. It will fill your tank so that you can show up in the ways you want to for your kid. And then start working on your own mindfulness and regulation. And then that is going to help you to do the same with your kid. That is really where I would start. And I think those 3 things are going to go a long way in transforming that parenting journey.
Yeah, this is so needed. Yeah, and connect with Penny.
Yep. Happy to help.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.